oh my gosh, it's $100 to get one of these Type 2 hard hats. I don't know. You won't buy them that nice thing, and you show up in your brand new Ford F-150, you know, you got the Raptor this time, guys. Like, everything's great. And I'm like, you don't think they don't see that? You were looking at the hard hats a second ago, so like, we got to share the story. All right, so we can grab one. So Eddie, do you want to tell the story about Nathan's hard hat here? So we've got some family history on these guys.
That looks wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, very, very uncomfortable.
Is that the one with the wire in it?
You all work for Messer?
We're kind of like the family did. Dad did. We have not.
So fun fact about those. So if you look over here, Will.
I'm trying to find the manufacture date.
The manufacture date. You probably won't. I don't know if they have them.
You don't almost see that thing being pressed directly out of tin.
Yeah,
right.
It's like,
seriously. No, so there's pencil marks on the side.
I see that
right here. So that's where that was great grandpa used to stick his pencils all the time. It's really cool too, because when he saw it, he was like, "Holy crap! I did the same thing." And so it was just kind of like a little family connection there. It was pretty cool. So that one's great grandpa's, and that one's Pop. That's our grandfather's.
I'm assuming he was right-handed because he definitely favors the right ear.
Yeah. So
Very
anyway,
cool.
I just want to show those to you. But we've got those in the background. It's like
it's fantastic.
We're trying to fill up the set with as much like little family, heirlooms as possible. We got Dad's going to bring over great grandpa's toolbox. And we're going to be able to set some of those things out here too, which is really cool. So I can take those off.
Awesome.
That was not staying there. It's just holding them all.
No, it's aluminum. It's not heavy. I can do it all day.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny that used to protect our noggins.
Yeah.
And like there's so much more advancement now in that technology, and like the wave cells. Like, so we talked to Dr. Botlang about those, and that was just really interesting. Like all the technology that goes into preventing concussions.
Right.
It's nuts. Absolutely nuts. And then
you went away from what I wanted to go visit.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I think I've lost it now.
Let
the moment passed.
Yeah, the moment passed.
All right.
I lost it.
Well, if that's the case, then let's. All right.
It is a great point about the evolution of the hard hat. We've actually, DPR construction has transitioned over to a helmet because it protects from lateral impact, stays on your head if you ever fall.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the ongoing evolution.
Should we do it? Should we do it? We should.
There's a whole discussion around it, and it's a debate. And when that debate hit online, like the whole helmet versus
we had that
versus hard hat.
That whole discussion blew up on LinkedIn when we posted a video about it, and it was because of, in some cases, the helmets are not actually as safe as like a traditional.
What's the example
of really interesting
of it not being safe?
You remember what it was?
Loosely. Make sure you got a Type 2 on, is I think the long and short of it.
Right.
Like not all helmets are created equally, so make sure you've got a Type 2 on, I think is the big rule that you need to remember.
Yeah.
There was some discussion about like kind of the form factor and whether, because the helmet sits closer to the head, it may not actually protect you against impact to quite the same degree as the helmet or as the old school hat.
Yeah, the helmet, I think in some cases, like in the Type 1s, they are less safe than the regular like Type 1 helmet or hard hat that we have been wearing, like similar to that style that we just were showing. But it actually has to do with the strap, I think. It's like it kind of holds your head in place. So there's no way to protect against a rotational impact. And that's the thing that actually gives you the concussion. It's not so much the side, like, because that doesn't actually give you the concussion. It's the whipping action that it causes your brain to warp. So it's fascinating. Like that whole episode,
endless
like
science there.
And so what they did is they did a bunch of drop tests, and they actually put like an egg in like this brain sort of style thing and did a bunch of drop tests on it to show like what happens with a Type 2 versus a Type 1 like helmet, safety helmet, regular hard hat, that sort of thing too. So the moral of the story is exactly that. Just make sure it's type 2. Just because it's a helmet style doesn't necessarily mean that it's better, which is, that's something I never knew.
Sure.
Like you get sold this idea that helmets are safer and like you just, oh yeah, it's a helmet. Well, like flip it over, take a look at it, make sure. I'm out on a site and I'm wondering how many people are walking around with helmets like that are type 1, thinking that they are
Thinking
safer.
that they're safer and they're just following directions.
Yeah, and that's just marketing gone awry in a lot of ways, right? Like,
We're fortunate to have a very knowledgeable, dedicated EHS team where there's a lot of exploration went into even brands, Cask versus 3M versus several others. They're comfortable. They're great.
Yeah, they're really comfortable.
Took a minute to get over that not being like, that's not a construction hard hat.
I know. It looks funny, right?
We're gonna wear that now. Yeah.
I feel like that's mostly like the issue with it being adopted. Like that style, people are like, I don't know. Like we're so style conscious in construction.
Who'd have thought?
Who knew?
We're just stubborn. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Just make them OD green and we're like all there though. Like seriously.
For sure. I'll put a bunch of stickers on it and it's going to look the same as
exactly.
I do remember, so Nathan is kind of a family name that, I got, say goodbye, Eddie, but I got middle name Nathan. I've passed that on to my kid, right? So great grandpa, that, we've kind of kept their hats and everything around. It's a cool little like family lineage that we like to celebrate. Yeah. And you did an opening of Grandpa's Tools. That was a really cool video because for all we knew, like the tools had been sealed since he died.
Oh,
like
wow.
the toolbox had never been opened. We're talking like 74, I think.
Yeah. And it's wood too. Like it's not
a
metal toolbox.
Old school wood with planes and different things. That it was an old carpenter's toolbox, a working toolbox. Like,
did he make that? Do you know? Like,
I think he did make his toolbox. Yeah. So
that's just another element.
And we had a few of them, but
yeah,
that was a cool moment that we were able to capture Dad opening like his grandpa's toolbox. That was fun.
Yeah. All right. So to business though. All right, guys. So we're not here to just completely talk about hard hats and all that stuff today, but more what you guys are doing in the recruiting space, like what you're trying to do within DPR to bring new foremen online specifically, right? That's kind of the focus is foremen.
All craft, I'd say.
Craft?
Yeah. All apprentice, carpenter, journeyman, foreman. Yeah.
So what sorts of things do you guys have going right now to try to help recruit? Let's start there. Then we can dive into the details of like how that's going, like some of the challenges and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just to start, there's the obvious sort of recruiting trail where you're marketing construction and DPR and things like that to folks that are in high school or community colleges or even younger middle school to get excited about the trades. There's a little bit of that just marketing blitz, but specifically what we're trying to do in order to create a pipeline is through our apprenticeship program. Yeah. And giving folks that are new to the trade the opportunity to learn and not have to just be thrown out on a job site to their own devices, but have some organized, structured learning to be able to learn a skill to last a lifetime. Yeah,
that's awesome. So, Will, you're out in California, so and you're in Florida. So you guys are kind of like in tandem together on this effort, right?
Yeah, we're I guess meeting in the middle on it.
In the middle. So, what do you guys have going out in California? Like, is there any differences? Are you guys just running the same sort of program out there? What does that look like for you?
That's a great question. In California, we're fortunate to have the unions, specifically the Carpenters Union, provide a lot of the training. And so what we at DPR offer is a way to for non-union folks to get those same opportunities. And that's really the focus of the apprenticeship program. And so there's a little bit less of a presence in somewhere like California where the unions are strong, and more of a presence, let's say in Florida or in regions of the Southeast where we can step in and provide some of those opportunities.
So unions doing a pretty good job of providing training in comparison to, like, say, a non-union state. Like, it seems that way.
Absolutely. I think in areas where there aren't strong unions, there is a void, and so we're trying to fill a void. But even more than that, kind of just level up our own skills in the way of leading and organizing crews and just leading on a job site versus simply the hard skills of, framing a wall or building forms or wiring a switch box or something like that.
It seems really interesting to me that, like, unions are, like, really leading the charge on a lot of the training stuff. And I'm like, who really benefits most from it? It's really the contractors that benefit the most from a lot of these training efforts. Outside looking in, that's what I would think. Yeah, so I think it's funny that the unions are the ones that just are like, yeah, no, we need to train people. Like, they're the ones that are leading the charge on this.
It is one of their primary functions. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Maybe I'm just not that educated on unions. I readily will admit that I'm not as educated on unions as I should be.
Well, you're in the Southeast.
I'm in the Southeast,
Sure.
yeah.
Right. So it hasn't been more of a normal part of, like, your dealings and what your construction life was. You go up into different regions, though, and it does change a good bit.
Yeah.
Curious on, like, obviously you saw a problem, you're trying to address the problem. So tell us about the problem, like, set this up. Everybody knows we've got a workforce gap that we're trying to cover. Is the gap more pronounced in some places than others, like, say, welders or electricians? How are you seeing that from the standpoint of being a large employer that needs that workforce gap closed?
Sure. I think the workforce gap is more pronounced in different trades. Maybe carpentry skills more so than maybe electricians, but we're kind of shades of gray and splitting hairs. I mean, there's a workforce shortage across all trades, and so you're right. What's a company like DPR doing about it? And it needs to start with a little bit of Will and I were talking about this before, of what's the value proposition for somebody who's not in construction to want to come into construction. You've got work sites that are exposed to the elements. There's stuff that can kill you on job sites. That can be stressful. Okay, those are the negatives, but what are the positives? What are the things that will attract folks to want to come into the trades? And that's where we've got to lean. That's where we've got to really lead, even by, hey, listen, you work with your hands. You like building stuff. You like creating. You like forming. Hey, this is a spot for you. And oh, by the way, we're going to make working conditions good as well. We're going to bring that value proposition forward so that you've got a reason to want to come work in the trades.
It reminds me of our conversation with Lee and how, that was a lot of what he was trying to address, is get feedback from the field to improve conditions in the field. What are you feeling? What stinks? What can we improve? And sometimes it was simple things.
Yeah, we'll link that one in the show notes. I think that's for sure. That was a great episode to talk about, how innovation and just getting out into the field will help you innovate more effectively. Like, I feel like people skip that step for some reason. It's hilarious.
Well, if you're 17 or 18, you're coming out of high school and you're looking at the landscape and thinking, what should I get into? Right? You might look at the local Piggly Wiggly and okay, they got air conditioning. Okay, I get in the morning and I know I have to stack 7 pallets worth of cans, right? Things are pretty cut and dry. If you look at construction, it might be a little bit more intimidating. And so I think it's really important that we as an industry start looking at how we make it attractive and how we make it a place where people wake up in the morning and want to go to work.
Yeah. What are the things that you guys are seeing, like, when you talk about this, it gets the most, like, ears to perk up? Like, what are those things that are attracting people the most? Like, is it pay? Is it like, what's that look like? Working with your hands?
Sure. I mean, pay, we have to provide a livable wage. People have to earn a living. So pay is important. And certainly, if some other industry or even company is paying more, that's gonna be a driver. But a lot of the things that folks perk up about nowadays, especially the younger generation, are things like holiday pay and PTO and being able to like have time off from working. It's no secret, construction can take a toll on your body a little bit.
Yeah.
We want to change that where it doesn't take as much of a toll on your body, but providing rest is a big deal. And folks, they care about that. They care about not just their pay, but how much time off, how much time can I spend with my family, how much time do I have for vacation, travel, downtime.
What
That's
sorts
important.
of PTO are you guys advertising? Like, what are you saying? Like, oh, you get this many days off if you
Sure.
work it. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, we pay 7 holidays and we pay 2 or 3 weeks PTO depending on your tenure.
Okay.
And that's pretty standard with what the unions have bargained for as well.
Okay.
So it's pretty standard across the board that way.
Yeah.
That's a side of field work that I can say I never saw. And then to a certain degree, it made it look more like a job and less like a career. You know, and so
What do you mean you never saw a break?
I never saw when I'm in the field actually working a path of progression. I couldn't look up and say my career will progress if I stay here. I figured I've got to jump off of this ladder and go get on a new one. And had I had a path of progression that included time off and increases in pay, and I kind of understood the level up, what things I needed to do. You know, mine working with my hands, I might have needed to know that, you know, I wasn't going to be, you know, doing the really awful things for the rest of my career, that I could capitulate into something where I was actually, you know, doing the form work or whatever the next thing was. So that to me, it creates a path of progression. It helps somebody to understand, no, this could be something you're going to work at for a long time. And, you know, shows just decent human kindness.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just for the office people.
Decency goes a long way.
Vacation's not only for the people that work in the office.
Right, or the trailer. Piggybacking a little bit what you're saying and what Will was talking about with intimidating. It can be intimidating if you don't see that career progression. And so then it's like, well, am I just going to, you know, frame a wall or, you know, run plumbing for 30 years? Maybe, yes, if that's what you want to do. But there's all these other options as well that provide a pathway for your career that could be a little meandering, but ultimately is what you want to make it versus it being decided for you ahead of time.
Yeah. What are you guys doing to, I guess, kind of give them next steps? Like, have you guys built any sort of like systems and like I said, all right, so if you come in here and you work here for this long, then you can go to this next step, kind of like show them that path of progression? Is that stuff that you're working towards?
Yeah, that's a great question. Recently, we've started to establish competencies. So within each role, there's a set of benchmarks that you can hit to achieve mastery in that role. And it's not saying that, okay, once you're a great journeyman, you will be promoted to foreman. There's a different set of skills for each of that. But you can look at the competencies and see what that role might entail, what the day-to-day duties might kind of look like based on those competencies. So it's not a direct career ladder per se, because there's a lot of different directions you can go in.
Right.
From, let's say, a journeyman, depending on your aspirations. But there's certainly that piece that you can look at and kind of peer behind the curtain and see kind of what that role might look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too, something that's maybe a little bit different about DPR is we self-perform a number of trades. And so it's maybe more akin to even sort of factory work where you might be doing carpentry, but you know, we have a waterproofing group that puts air barrier and caulks or whatever. You can learn another skill, move to another trade and keep going. That also is part of the career progression and the next steps you're talking about, being able to give folks options even within trades rather than just being potentially stuck to one.
Mm-hmm. That's where I like this a whole lot better for, like, I have to relate to this to a certain degree with my kids.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to tell them? How am I going to counsel them? We were talking about our teenagers earlier. It's like, am I going to coach them up and say, yeah, I think you should do this? And, if Piggly Wiggly, if they're paying, $15, $18 an hour, because there are jobs now that you're making that flipping hamburgers.
Yeah.
And it's not that that's not, a skill, but the things that we're gaining through an apprenticeship program, you got some real skill that you can use, and those can be taken and reapplied elsewhere. Now I have a skill that can be taken from here, and I can go from carpentry maybe to the waterproofing group, and I've got skills that will translate now. Because it's amazing once you start to learn how to build, how a lot of things that we do, they're similar. You start understanding how things go together, how to function on a team.
I can speak
how to show
this.
up, put a day in.
Like I can speak to this completely because like that was my path, was going through more of an apprenticeship style thing here with the family business. Mm-hmm. And now it's funny, like I'm in filmmaking essentially, like for construction, and that's awesome. But like every single day, something that I learned as a detailer translates to me in this new career. And so it's like getting kids into a skill, even though if they don't stay for a long time, dude, like this is a valuable thing to have just in life. Like it can teach you so much. I feel like we're going to be making more well-rounded individuals if we can teach them, like, heck, electrical for crying out loud, welding. Sure. Like you're going to be able to translate those skills somewhere else.
Right.
Very beneficial.
And a big part of the apprenticeship program too is being able to read construction drawings, blueprints, right? And with that skill unlocks a lot of doors. Oh, yeah. And it allows you to look at the bigger picture of the project and understand the why things are sequenced in a certain way. And once you start looking at it like that, I think that's what really unlocks a lot of doors and allows you to be a great builder.
What's funny is that, like, how often do we bring a new person out on site and then immediately teach them how to read drawings? I don't feel like that happens as much anymore,
enough,
right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they're just like, yeah, go here, put that door in, or, go frame this, go, sweep. But they're not shown the full picture.
And it used to be where you could take a set of plans home and study it and start looking at it in your spare time. And now a lot of that has gone to iPads. Yeah. And so a little bit more difficult to pull that home and pull that up.
There are software solutions out there that are making that a little easier.
Sure.
But at the same time, like you got to know what you're making, man. Like that helps you put in the effort. Like if you know that you're building like Truist Park or something, like the Braves Stadium up here in Atlanta, like that makes my life a little cooler. Like I'm like, yeah, I'm helping do this. It makes you a little bit more proud about like what you get to do every day.
Reminds me of Dad and Pop. Dad went out and started as a laborer, but Pop, he had the wherewithal to grab a set of plans. And he's like, yeah, you're going to be a laborer on these sites, but here's a set of plans. You're going to learn about what you're building. So he put that set of plans and he said, you go and study that and you go learn this job. And so, that's some foresight there. It was really cool that Dad was given that by his dad, that he was able to just have that set of plans. And all of a sudden there was an overarching context for the project. And once we learned this skill, now I can translate that in where it went from, laborer to layout person to, coming up through and finally landing in the office. But now I've got a context for the field too that helped me in the office.
And sometimes it's not always about moving to a different position, to moving to layout, let's say. Maybe it's just about really understanding the ins and outs of your particular role and being badass at that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And beyond that, it's also about understanding the why. And I think when you start looking at why we're doing this, what the bigger plan is, I think anyone's going to get a lot more job satisfaction rather than just thinking, I show up, I turn a bolt, and that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, I remember when Dad started teaching me how to read drawings. I was at Aunt Judy's house. I remember that. We were like sitting on the floor. And I remember him just like laying out some drawings and he was showing me, like, he probably does not remember this, but I remember like the first time he was like, yeah, that's a beam. That's what this is. And he starts like showing me what he's doing in the basement when he's an ogre. And because at the time ABSI was just in the basement. And I don't know. For me, that was a moment where I was like, actually, that's kind of cool. Like, it's cool that like these lines can like turn into something like huge, like a building, like a National Infantry Museum, like something like that. That's amazing. So freaking cool.
Little paint by numbers for each phase of the project.
Yeah, right, exactly. But that to me kind of like ties into the mentorship. I know that's something that we've experienced firsthand from our family, right? Are you guys trying to develop mentors in this too? Is that a thought? Like, how are you guys approaching that?
For sure. That's a huge component. I mean, construction has a lot of hands-on learning. We want to supplement that a little bit with some book learning, classroom learning, but a lot of it's hands-on. And in order to learn appropriately hands-on, you have to have a mentor.
Yeah.
And you have to have somebody that will take a little bit of time to show you, maybe a better way to do what you're doing or to answer questions when you have them. That's so important in our industry. And I think that's cool too, because you can be, like Will was saying, a badass journeyman and also a teacher. And that's pretty cool to be able to combine sort of those aspects. And maybe there's some satisfaction not only about a building, but building others.
Yeah.
We have a saying at DPR, who we build is as important as what we build.
Yeah.
And that ties directly into mentorship. It's an important piece, not only of apprenticeship, but of any kind of career journey in the trades.
Yeah.
And I think, to Chris's point, any great learning opportunity has two pieces, the knowledge piece and the application piece.
Yeah.
And the knowledge piece is great for in the classroom, looking at a textbook, understanding maybe the properties of concrete, right? Compression versus tensile strength, things like that. And then going out in the field and being able to actually apply that. This is why we put rebar in concrete, to reinforce it.
Yeah.
Kind of that idea. And that knowledge piece is great, but it needs to be put into practice to become muscle memory. And that happens on the job site, on those.
That seems to be an area we're struggling as an industry, is like the application piece, right? Like, we can go into the classroom and get all the knowledge in the world, but it's the application of it too. And I think we're seeing that a lot with like PMs, where they come out of the classroom, they've got all this knowledge on how to run a job, quote unquote knowledge on how to run a job, but they don't have that real world experience of like, but here's what it's actually like to tie rebar all day. Here's what it's actually like to pour concrete, put in doors. And I feel like that breeds some understanding for even the trades too. So it's like at a PM level, I would think that this is like, even if, you start here, this would be beneficial for you.
Yeah, I think the sawdust pile has to be just as thick, if not thicker, than any books that go into that program.
That's a good prerequisite. I get down with that.
No, you're right about sort of classroom learning and how that applies to PMs, and have project managers that come out of school into the industry. Do they have hands-on learning? But if they don't, fine. You're on the job now.
Yeah.
Get some.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity there to break down some barriers where a journeyman can teach a project manager their craft, their trade, and that breaks down barriers, creates a learning culture on the job site.
Yeah.
It can be powerful that way.
I still remember guys that were mentors for me in the field. Like, I still remember Randy. I still remember Henry. I still remember Frederick. Like, I remember those guys that were out there with me and showing me how to tie, showing me how to frame, showing me how to plumb. And like those, it's funny when you're young how formative and how impressionable you really are. And the apprenticeship program is a great opportunity to invest in a life. And I don't want to overlook that. Like, you're taking the time and you're teaching them something. You're teaching them a trade. You're teaching them a skill, but you're helping them understand life a little better. They're learning how to grow up, learn how to work.
Right, work with others.
Yeah. And that might be new. They might not have done that at 18 years old, 19 years old. So you're building a life, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, these younger kids, they don't have their brains fully developed yet. Like, really, like they don't. And yeah, you're able to come in there and shape it. Like, when I started, my brain wasn't fully developed. I think it might have just stopped maybe a month ago. Actually, no, I think it's still going. But but that's like you help build a life. I mean, that's the case with me in the apprenticeship is like, I mean, I may not still be in like the day-to-day building side of things, but it did help build me to this place. Like it did build my, like I found like my whole career has been built on a foundation of construction, full stop. And like I have so much to be thankful for in that regard. So I don't know, for me, whenever I talk about this sort of thing, I'm like trying to encourage other kids to like go out there and just learn a skill, like just do something, just try it. Cause you'll be able to weave your way. You'll be able to figure it out. There are people they're going to invest in you, they're going to invest in you.
I want to ask you guys, like for the young person, because I hope people get a hold of this show and say, here, I want to pass this around. You're kind of thinking about what you could do with your life. You're looking out at the world, and like, is the construction community there with open arms? Like,
Absolutely.
I want to ask that and just let you guys riff, because I mean, that's what I feel like we can get passionate about here.
The construction industry wants the best of the best. We want folks that want to learn. We want folks that are eager, but just as much, we need folks that want to work, and that's a reality. But you talk about open arms, absolutely. I think construction is a people business first. It's all about people, and how people interact and come together to build something, long lasting and that they can be proud of. And so there's an investment that the industry and certainly DPR is making into people, but it's a people business, and so that's what we need, and we're there with open arms for sure.
Yeah.
And when you're young, I think what you lack is experience, right? And construction is great because you come in and you're getting experience really quick. Sometimes that can feel overwhelming because the learning curve is high. But at DPR, I think with the apprenticeship program, we're helping. We're saying we're there to support. And here's the knowledge that you will need on the job site. I think it's a great opportunity for young folks to come into this industry right now because there are so few people making their way in and so many people that are leaving the trades. I don't think there's a better time than now for folks to look at construction because there's so many opportunities available to them.
What kind of equipment are these guys nerding out about? Like the guys and girls that are coming into the apprenticeship program, like what kind of things? I remember the first time I got like a Carhartt shirt to work in. I had company logo on. I was like, they're giving me free stuff? Like, this is amazing. Like what kind of stuff are like just from the standpoint of tools or equipment or different things, like what kind of things are they getting excited about having for the first time? It's
funny you mentioned Carhartt because we do have some really cool Carhartt backpacks. In that, what's that? That traditional Carhartt color,
that kind of brown.
No, dude, you have one too.
I do.
You have one today. Yeah,
I do.
I love it.
And that's
awesome.
We had an introductory core class last week in Nashville where we typically hand those out first week. Well, for whatever reason, I think we're low on supply. And there was a lot of feedback about not getting that back. So that's definitely a hot item.
Everybody likes some good swag.
Yeah, swag.
But you're getting some tools. And I mean, I remember getting a trailer to run around in or a company truck to be in. So, I mean, it was a crappy truck, but but I was like, I get to ride around somebody else's ride for a little while. And it was an upgrade for me. So I didn't care.
Yeah.
Power tools are always fun.
Yeah.
You get the skill saw or you get the screw gun and you get to work with those. Power tools are certainly a hit, I think. Now we've got in our framing group, our drywall and framing group, we do structural framing, and so you're using a lot of powder actuated guns. I mean, they're guns. They fire off. I see apprentices get some smiles whenever they get to learn how to use those for the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
little 22 most of the
time.
Put
that little cartridge in, okay. Yeah.
That strip of them in.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, you just got to stop them from shooting their Sprite can.
Right.
That's the big thing.
It's Monster Energy.
Monsters, yeah. Monsters are liquid death, I think. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I'm curious for you guys, like what you see all of these different career paths now. I know from my experience, I'll look back and I'll be like, dude, it would have been fun to do that instead, or like pick up that skill. Like, what are you guys seeing that you're like, man, if I could go back, I might ought to do that. Like, I might ought to be a welder or something like that. Do you guys have anything like that?
I don't know.
or you're like, oh, there's a lot of money there. I should have gone there.
You talk about money. There is a practicality to coming into the trades. You can go to a college, and nothing against colleges, but you may graduate with $100,000 in debt. Mm-hmm. You come into the trades, you join, specifically DPR in our apprenticeship program, and you're making money day one, and you have no debt. Mm-hmm. So that affords you a pretty good opportunity to maybe get ahead in life, start saving a little earlier, and work your way up. But to say to do it all over again. I came up in a little bit in concrete. I did some residential concrete when I was younger, and I just remember that was fun and low stress, and compared to what I do now. Yeah. And so if I'm making decisions, for a younger Chris Bell, it's hey, that was fun and that was low stress. Maybe you should have stuck with that for a little longer, What
about you, Will? Anything?
Yeah, I came up in concrete as well, and looking back, it was a ton of fun. I remember thinking that calling the electrical field electricery because it was completely mystical to me what happened there. As I've grown up and start to understand a little bit more, it's really fascinating, I think, some of the electrical theory behind it and a lot of just everything that goes on with that. And I would have liked to dig in and understand it a bit more when I was younger, but I think it was a little bit scary.
Dude, we got a bunch of concrete dudes around the table too, because like you came up in concrete, you came at like everybody here except for me.
It's a readily available job, trust me.
Readily available.
Yes.
Low barrier to entry.
Yeah. That was exactly what I needed when I was getting out of college and trying to make sure that I had an income and getting rid of any, remnant debt and everything. Yeah. Like, oh, I can get that job. I know how to do that.
Yeah.
That's what my cousins did. And one day they said, hey, we need a guy to come out and help with demolition before we can pour. It was a driveway, actually. And I said, sure, I'll be there. And it stuck.
Demo is a great thing. Like
demo
can be really fun. Now it can be grueling and it can be dangerous. But it can also be a ton of fun, just tearing things up. It's also quite the education. Because you tear a building apart, like you're deconstructing and you're getting to find out what's behind a wall, like how they frame that up. So it was actually quite a learning experience to just be on a demo crew for, summers with Dad. Because that was kind of where it all started.
Sure. So, a big difference between a 4-inch slab and then ripping out a 6-inch slab. Yeah. And you learn that the hard way.
Well, I remember when, we came in with the jackhammer, the normal, and it was like an electric jackhammer, and we're trying to beat the floor up and remove the slab with it. And we went heavy equipment pretty quickly thereafter. So, and also just, knowing what the work environment can feel like when that piece of equipment is rattling the ground you're standing on, and even with ear protection in, quite loud. So
I have fond memories of demoing a bathroom, and Larry Chandler, if you're watching this, I remember this dude. I remember this. Gave me a cold chisel and just said, all right, have fun. Cold chisel and a hammer. And I'm just sitting in there and I'm just beating on tile, just trying to get tile. And it was a master bedroom, like really ritzy house, like tile everywhere. Tile freaking everywhere. And he's just like, yeah, go demo. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like 14 at the time. Oops.
Yeah. He was filming that secretly laughing at you from behind like two-way glass or something.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. He's over there taking phone calls on his Bluetooth. Like, yeah, sure. Bring the kid with the young back. Have fun. Golly. Yeah, that taught me really quick. Demo can be fun, but man, when that happens and you don't have like the power tool to get it done, oh God. It's the worst. Oh, it's so bad.
The tricks of the trade, right? You learn that there's an easier way to do it, and then you're like, why did I do it the hard way for so long?
It's called renting the tool that you need in most cases.
I remember I got had a little bit like first day I was on site, and I've talked about this, but it's like 98 degrees, and the foreman, he sends me over to go scrape the slab because it like rained, and you pour a slab, it rains, and you get some of the impurities and different things that rise to the surface. We're going to chip that off. And it didn't, we were backfilling over this. It was a footing. And he totally just sent me over there because he didn't want to deal with me. So he was like, grab a scraper, kid, go over there and scrape the slab. So for 4 hours my first day, I scraped a slab for no reason whatsoever.
He got what was coming to him, though, didn't he? Is he the guy that stepped out on some rebar?
No. That's
Okay.
a different guy.
Oh, a different guy.
That's a
Okay.
cringy story.
Yeah, okay.
Ouch.
Yeah, dude hopped down on a piece of rebar.
Yeah.
got a little bit skewered. Yeah. Anyway.
Ouch. Yeah.
Sorry, guys, for the graphic nature of this podcast.
Yeah,
how that turned.
turned.
Well, all right. So we've talked about like your apprenticeship program and stuff. I want to help other contractors though. Like, let's give them some advice, like from what you guys have seen. All right. Other contractors listen to this, and I feel like the only way we're going to fix this whole labor problem, like bringing people in, teaching them a skill, is like going to be banding together. Right. It's gonna be together.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some pieces of advice that you would give to other contractors for starting something like this up? Like what is the first step that they could take that would help them get an apprenticeship program moving?
I think what DPR is doing is really changing the industry by looking at labor not as a cost driver and something to tamp down, but as a sales driver, right? We're a technical builder, and we need technically skilled people in order to perform that work. By giving them training opportunities and career opportunities, we're scaling our people up. And that is allowing us to be better at what we do. So there's a strong business case for it. And I think that's important to understand, that yes, this is a great opportunity to provide folks.
Yeah.
And there is an altruistic side to it, but there's also a really strong business case for it. The stronger, more skilled your people are, the more you'll benefit from that too as an employer.
To get practical for a minute, you get through the business case, and you choose to invest in your employees.
Yeah.
Our apprenticeship program is in conjunction with NCCER, who's a nationally accredited group that has curriculum.
Yeah.
They have a lot of modules, training modules, whether it be carpentry or electrical work or welding, and the list goes on. If you don't know where to start, and you're in a non-union area, an area that doesn't already have training going on, NCCR is a great place to start, just practically to start with some curriculum and be something that's regimented to be able to kind of work through to give training to your employees.
So I'm not educated on this. So they like put together a full curriculum for every, like, that you can just pull off the shelf and use.
Yeah. And just a reminder, for me anyway, I remind myself, curriculum is just a fancy word basically for textbook. Yeah. And so that's what they have. They have these books for each level. Like if you look at carpentry, they'll have levels 1 through 4, and they match up with U.S. Department of Labor standards as far as hours and training goes to meet those requirements. So you can pull that book and look through, and they've got modules, usually starts with safety, as it should, and then progresses and gets harder until you hit level 4 in carpentry, and that would be before you become a journeyman. There's concrete, drywall, which typically was part of the carpentry umbrella, but you can break those out as well. And even within that, just use certain modules if you want to task train or provide a bit more specific of instruction.
It's good to know that you're not going to have to reinvent the whole wheel.
Right.
Like put together an entire curriculum just yourself for this stuff. I know that was something that we had to do a lot in detailing. It was like we had a full manual on like, hey, here's how to be a detailer, because we couldn't find it and we had to reinvent it. But for contractors, at least, it seems like that's pretty pretty available, at least from a skilled trades perspective.
I think it's changing. If you're right, maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, there wouldn't have been any of this stuff. But there's enough industry material out there now that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now, of course, leadership and kind of leading a crew, that takes a different set of skills.
Right.
But there's training materials already available for that within our industry as well. And you can take that and kind of tweak it to how you see fit for your own firm, for the types of folks you have, maybe the places that you need to lean in a little bit more. Is it communication skills, or is it like actual planning skills? But there's enough industry material out there, particularly through the NCCER, that you don't have to start from square one on your own.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, a lot of our craft folks are Spanish speakers, and NCCR offers a lot of translations to these titles too.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So we can offer folks those resources in Spanish if necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a pool, especially down here in the South. We see a lot of Spanish speaking skilled trades people, and so that's good to know as well. I think one thing I would piggyback off of too that seems obvious as a first step too would be find somebody who's a champion within your organization. Right. Yeah, like I mean, for you guys, that's what you are, right? You're champions within your organization for this sort of thing. And I think a lot of times people don't just they don't find somebody who's really passionate about it already, and they just kind of make it a sweeping declaration, but nothing actually gets done. Find somebody that can be the boots on the ground and like have the conversations, try to put together these things like you guys have. Right.
For sure. You have to have a champion. And we hear a lot in our industry, and certainly in our company, a lot of folks that are older in their tenure, they say, hey, I want to give my learning back to others.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to do that. We're going to take you out of producing in the field, and we're going to put you in a position where you're producing the next generation of builders.
Yeah.
And you have to make that investment. And I think there are more folks out there than we realize. You have to pinpoint that, assign a champion, make that investment, and go.
Yeah.
Investing like that it may be hard to kick off. How long has DPR been doing this program, and then what kind of fruits are you seeing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in terms of a structured apprenticeship program that we sponsor, it's been a few years, but in terms of training in general for our craft individuals, whether that's foreman training or other skills learning for journeymen in the field, we've been doing that as long as we've been a company. Mm-hmm. But to get more structured and formal about it, to be able to market that to the next generation coming into construction, we're on year 4, I think.
Correct. We're expecting our first batch of graduates actually in early 2024.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then what's that pipeline look like? Like how many? We were talking a little bit before the show, but how many do you have in that pipeline from apprenticeship and other?
So there's a couple of components to any apprenticeship program. There's a RTI, or related technical instruction, which happens in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And there's exams that folks have to pass with a score of 70 or greater to be able to move on to the next module. There's also a OJT portion, which is on-the-job training, right? And that's usually about 2,000 hours per year. So once those 2 requirements are met, then typically they'll be a graduate of the apprenticeship program. That can vary a lot from individual, right? Based on their hours that year, based on their ability to master the content in the classroom. So there are some variables within that.
I think you said you had, 130?
132 roughly. I believe.
Yeah. 132.
Yeah.
Golly.
That's no small crop of new talent coming in.
Well, you think of the ripple that could have, and the compounding interest that a group of 130 could have on a community, right? Like, because I would assume 130 people probably have siblings, cousins, whatever, that are looking for their path too. And so if that 130 goes out and it starts recruiting that next gen that comes through the pipeline, it's going to grow itself theoretically if it's good. And I don't know, I like to think that there's some organic growth that could happen through just word of mouth. And hopefully that happens.
I mean, for sure, word of mouth is a good way to spread what is going on. But when you create a program and you have 132 individuals, and some graduate, or eventually all 132 graduate, well, that means we need 132 more to come and fill those seats. And to your point about compounding, now those graduates are into the workforce and they're spreading the word, and so 132 seats are available. That could be 260, 300. It grows from there. And it's not just that we want to create, call it this flywheel effect. That's certainly a piece of it, but it's more to show the growth and maturity. Folks, they want to know they've got some stability. They want to know that they've got something that has some staying power. Yeah. And as that continues, the reputation, the credibility, the availability just grows.
Yeah. I think we saw that with like Angie Simon, how it compounded. Like she was doing the heavy metal summer camp. And she did it that first year. I can't remember exactly what it was, like maybe 30, maybe 50 kids that came out to it. It was literally just a summer camp. And now it's well over like 500. Yeah. And it's year 3, maybe 3, but it's compounded. It's just blown up. And it's the word of mouth, man. It's so cool. So I say all of that to kind of encourage people that, like, okay, even if your first class isn't like massive, say it's 10, this is a long-term play that you need to make. Like, this isn't something that you can just do 1 year and drop the next. Like, you need to continually invest in this for the next 20 years in order to really see it grow and flourish. I feel like a lot of times people just give up on it because it's like, oh, we didn't really have that much demand. Well, you got to stick with it, right?
Yeah, and not to be a contrarian by any means.
Please.
But there are definitely some long-term benefits to that when they graduate, when they start spreading the gospel of good habits on their job site.
Yeah.
But even in the short term, by investing in folks, you're creating a lot of buy-in, a lot of engagement. Mm-hmm. People are saying, not only am I showing up and doing something, but DPR construction or XYZ construction is showing up and doing something for me every day too, to better my career.
Yeah.
And that feeling that you get from being part of something bigger than just yourself, that recognition, I think is huge and makes people show up every day. And when they put that tool belt on, they're ready to work.
Yeah.
Their mind is there, they're focused, they're present, and they're ready to give you their best. Mm-hmm. So I think there are short-term gains to it as well as long-term gains, which is really the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and they're working while they're being educated.
That's right.
So that's awesome too, because I mean, they may not be where they're going to be in 3 years, but we've got a lot of starters and we've already started to fill in some of the holes that we needed to fill in with workforce. Like, we are bringing people in, starting to train them, starting to learn things. Yeah. Starting to move up in their skill levels, but they're here. They're here now. They're making an impact. And that's step one, is informing people that it's an available opportunity, which is, why I like the episode today. I think this is an opportunity for people to say, hey, this is out there.
Can I get on my soapbox for just a second?
You're probably going to do it either way.
I'm probably going to do it either way. But no, this is something that I've seen like more recently. Like, I developed out this idea for, and sorry, this is going to be a little bit self-serving. Just forewarning. I'll put $1 in the jar, guys. But I developed out this like strategy for trying to attract people to contractors, right? So like creating content for specific reasons and then drawing them in. I would go and pitch that, and I've pitched it to multiple people that shall remain nameless. But it's amazing what happens when the money conversation happens. They get little T-Rex arms. And they're like, nope, can't do it. Like but the whole time they're talking about how they need to invest in like developing new ways to attract people into the industry. They're saying all of these things, but they're not actually following through with it in their actions and with their finances. Like, I don't care if you spend money with me. I really don't care. It's just the fact that we're not trying it. We're not actually putting the financial butt behind making things happen. And so when I see things like this, it's like, I appreciate it. It's like, you're actually trying. You're actually trying to do something. Because I see a lot of contractors out there that they go into the, I'm going to call it, they get into the wambulance, wah. And they start talking about how there's nobody to work anymore. And like, there's nobody out there that wants to, get off their phones and wah. But they're not actually investing in it, man. Like, they're not actually doing things. And it's just an irritant for me right now. So I sorry, there's my soapbox. So don't let that be you, in other words, right? Like, if you're listening, just don't let that be you. Please, I beg of you.
It may take some financial capital. You're right. And so you have to commit to that. But the returns are there. There's study after study, not just in the construction industry, but in all industries, where if your employees are happy, they're more productive and more efficient. You may not see that on day one. And so there is a return for that investment. It's not just altruistic as much as it seems that way. Yes, it's about bettering folks, but there's also, as Will said before, there's a business case to be made. There's a return. So there's some financial capital there, but I agree with what you said about the contractors. We can get into a wambulance. And I think that's why we have to spur change. We can't just rely on the way we've always done it and say, well, these folks don't want to work anymore. And so therefore, everything's going in the tanker. And it's like, no, we've got to change and adapt to what the workforce is and what they want. Yeah. And we have to be able to discern that, but then also commit the time to it. Yeah. You talk about working conditions, or you talk about just the availability of training or the ability to grow your career. Okay, those are maybe more apparent things to change. But why is the workforce maybe not wanting to work? Is it because we're treating them like crap on the job site and yelling at them all the time? Yeah. Is it because it's just porta-johns instead of a real toilet to a bathroom to go in? Is it because they've got an opportunity down the road at a much better place that provides opportunity for advancement and learning? Okay, let's really look into those things and make change. If we don't, it's going to pass us by, and we're going to be left in the dust.
Well, I mean, I've seen it down to people complaining about the cost of some of these new hard hats to protect people. It's like, oh my gosh, it's $100 to get one of these Type 2 hard hats. I don't know. And they freak out about it. And, they get little T-Rex arms. They won't reach out and actually buy the thing. And I'm like, guys, your team sees that. Your team sees you being a little bit cheap, and then you won't buy them that nice thing, and you show up in your brand new Ford F-150. You got the Raptor this time, guys. Like, everything's great, and I'm like, you don't think they don't see that? Like it comes back, a lot of it, and again, I'm just kind of being a dead horse here. In a lot of ways, it's just like, put your money where your mouth is, guys. Like, you say you care, actually just invest in your people. It's as simple as buying them one of the new hard hats, show them that you care, legitimately show them that you care. And maybe that means you're driving last year's truck, and that's okay. That's fine. Be there for your people. And I think that's a big issue that I have with a lot of conferences too, man. Like, you go and you hear a lot about all the things that we're struggling with, but you never hear any solutions. Like, you hear a bunch of people getting on the ambulance talking about how everything's horrible, but nothing ever changes. And so for me, I'm like, I want people to come out of this saying, like, what am I going to actually do? Like, what am I physically going to go do? What am I going to deploy my capital at to try to fix this problem? Because that's the only way it changes. The only way it changes is by us putting our money where our mouth is and trying to actually find new ways of doing things, find better ways of doing an apprenticeship program, deploying it into advertising or supporting other little things. That's what it's going to take. And it's not something we've had to do in the past, because it's been easier to find people. They've just come.
Yeah, I was reading just this week that, I think it was in Washington, that several projects only had 2 bids on them, or 1 bid even. And some of them they couldn't move forward on because there weren't enough bids from contractors. Part of that, I think the article stated that there's a shortage of labor. So a lot of people can't forecast that they'll have the manpower to be able to complete those projects. Whoever can solve this current problem of labor shortage, of, maybe a lack of skills, there's a lot of, I think, rewards at the end of that rainbow, and so I think it's a worthwhile venture to look at how we can help get folks in the trade and how we can help skill them up.
Yeah.
And we might have to open our pocketbooks, but I think that will pay dividends long term.
Oh yeah.
There's a bit of a mindset shift, I think, that we're talking about around the industry, and that mindset shift is around how we view our people, specifically how we view our labor. And there's a lot of contractors that do well with it, but pervasively across the industry, we look at our labor component as a commodity. Mm. It's a component of our estimate or our budget, and we don't look at it as people. We look at it more as a commodity. And so there's a little bit of a mindset shift that we're talking here around how we view our labor, how we view the skills and the traits, and how we invest in those skills and traits. And if we shift that mindset as an industry, then we're going to be in a much better place around how to solve it. Mm-hmm. Maybe second point to that, we do a really great job in our industry at looking at problems and what's wrong and how to fix it. Even this labor shortage we're talking about, or upscaling our craft workers' skills as a problem. And I'm going to steal a little bit of a line from our safety leader at DPR. If we were more curious about what's going right and why, if we were spending as equal amount of time on investigating where it's going well and how to replicate as we do on what the problems are and how to fix them, I think we'd find ourselves in a different spot as an industry too, and not too short a time.
That's a good one. I like that. All right, guys. Well, I think we've come to our megaphone question. All right, so buckle up. All right, it's our favorite question. So if we gave you a megaphone in around, all right, so since there are two, you were splitting this up, 30 seconds. You get 30 seconds, all right?
Cool. I thought you were going to say 15, so I'll take it.
30 seconds, all right? Be tight, all right? What would you want to say to the construction industry? What would you want to leave with?
Well, let me first say I've never understood a full sentence spoken through a megaphone. So if you can switch that to maybe a podcast, I'm on board.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, on a podcast.
Thank you.
All right, do it. Do you want to kick it off, Will?
He's laughing at his own joke.
Crack myself up.
Those are the best ones, honestly.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to change the way we as an industry look at mistakes. Instead of it being, oh man, that's going to be costly. That's rework. That's, what were you thinking, dude? Come on. Instead of that, looking at, hey, this is a great learning opportunity, right? And I think that changes. If people feel comfortable, like it's okay to make a mistake, an honest mistake, then people come to work and with the idea that they're going to learn something too. It's also an opportunity. We can get away from that old school mentality of getting yelled at and people feeling tense when they don't know something exactly. And so I would really like if we could all maybe commit to looking at things that happen on the job site that might go sideways and saying, okay, how can we all learn from this?
Yeah.
That's my 30 seconds.
Nah, bro, that was 50. Anyway. All right, Chris. That's good stuff.
If I had one thing to say to the industry, I think I want to talk directly to the craft professionals out there, the men and women that are physically building every day. Be proud. That rubber base that you're putting in the hallway of that hospital, that's a facility that's going to save somebody's life. The faucet that you're hooking up in the hotel bathroom, is a hotel that a family maybe saved up for 3 years to go enjoy and have some time off. the things you're doing are making a difference. It's building our society, building our world. So be proud.
Heck yeah. That's good stuff, guys. Well, Chris, Will, thanks for joining us this week, y'all. Thanks for coming all the way out here.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Thank you for having us.
Flying from California. Holy crap. Yeah.